So over the weekend, you may have had an email or two from IBM that looked a little bit worrying. So if you are on Workspace release 61 and you are a local on-premise customer, there are some security vulnerabilities with that version that IBM have notified us about. So those vulnerabilities essentially mean that there is a potential risk that someone could access your data without being fully authenticated. The risk of this, it's not necessarily a run out and unplug your servers straight away sort of problem, but as with anything where data security is a concern, you should, if you're on version 61, upgrade to 62 as soon as is reasonably possible. And of course, if you are on version 61, it is quite new as it is. So assuming you did your upgrade process as would be suggested, you probably also still have a backup of your previous release that you can just downgrade to quite quickly should you want to. Now, what we have here, so how do you know about these notifications? Well, if you've already got them, you're fine. If you don't know about this until now, what I would suggest is, as business partners, we will always tell our customers about this, as will other business partners. But if you want to get those notifications directly to yourself as well, head on over to ibm.com/support/fixcentral, search for the product you are interested in, and browse for fixes. And if you have all the correct credentials and access, you can actually come here to download your releases anyway. But at the very least, you will have this subscribe to support notifications option. And as long as you set yourself up with an IBM ID, you can subscribe to these notifications, and you will get emails for things such as new releases becoming available or potentially vulnerabilities that they have found, as is the case this weekend. And you can also go to the My Notifications site to more granularly manage exactly which sort of emails you do and don't get, so you don't get overloaded with them. So you can just subscribe to the critical ones that you are interested in. But what this has meant is that the notification that there was an issue came out on Friday the 19th in the evening, UK time. And on Saturday, IBM did add Workspace Release 62 onto Fix Central for download. So if you are a local customer, you can now get that. What this really means for you, so if you are looking at doing an upgrade now, Release 61 still is available on Fix Central at the time as of recording, but if you're doing an upgrade from a version earlier than 61, just make sure you don't download 61. Don't install 61. Go to either 62 or something else. Now, if you are a cloud software as a service customer from IBM, don't worry about it. They are handling upgrading everyone to 62 anyway, and I think you might actually already be there. But if you are a local customer, arrange to do this relatively quickly. But what this has meant is, I believe 62 was very close to being released anyway, but I think it has probably been expedited by a few days or about a week. And we do have some new features in 62, particularly some things that people will have been looking forward to anyway. So let's have a look at some of those. Now, there's a few that will impact end users. One of them being the ability to now create asymmetric calculations. So previously, if I wanted to create a calculation when I had nested rows or columns, I would right click, create calculation, and as we see here, it would happen on every instance of that specific element. But perhaps I would only want to create something on my single consolidation level element here and not the individual stores. I can now do that. So as a user, what I will have to do is show my overview section. And then in the overview section, I can just click on the column or the row icons. And when I do that, we see it comes up with this targeted row selection that we can do. So then I can scroll to the specific thing that I want to create my calculation on, and then it is just doing it in that interval. So it creates it a little bit more flexibly for us than we will have been able to do previously. So that's probably quite a nice thing. Now, another one for some end users, it's not something I have really used much, but I did see some people were a little bit upset that when we went to the new layout of Workspace a few versions ago, that the impact sort of diagrams were removed, but they are back. So if you have a metric style cube, and that's one where your dimension attributes specifies that it is for this purpose, you will now, in the recommended visualization settings, have the ability to go to those sort of metrics diagrams as you previously had them. So if you do use them, you can now do your upgrade and still use them. If you are considering using them, they're there as well. So it's potentially something you might be interested in, or maybe not. Depends who you are. Now, what else do we have? So we sort of get on more to the side of developer options now. But one that I know a lot of developers were sort of screaming out for a little while is this sort of being able to synchronize the process button parameters. So now that has been added in. So if we set a process button up, let's quickly just choose something here, and we go to the set parameters option. Now we have in here, if I go down, we have a synchronized option that we didn't have previously, and then we can choose our dimension and hierarchy of choice. And if you set that up, it will pick it up from your context options or how you have filtered your views, depending how the synchronization is all set up. So you can now do that, and it is something people have been asking for a little while. For me, I'm still probably not going to use those very much. So if you're running a silent process where you just click something and it happens in the background and you don't really want to go too much into the detail, great. But normally in a workspace book, I'm designing them for users, not for me. And generally, when I have users running a process, I want to be absolutely certain that they know what they are doing. So I like to have it come up and prompt them. And I like, after they do it, for it to give them some feedback of what they have done. Now, those options are still not available for the built-in process buttons, but they are still available, as they always have been, in web sheets. So for me, because of the added functionality, I still put my action button inside a web sheet. Now, the problem of why a lot of people didn't use them is because they generally are difficult to have looking nice. But what I do, as we see here, I create really simple, super ugly web sheet buttons, and then behind them, I put one of the process buttons from Workspace that doesn't actually do anything. Normally, I would size them so they are in exactly the same sort of space. And then on my web sheet, I put the opacity down to 0%. So as far as a user is concerned, they are just hitting that button. It is completely seamless, but we get the full synchronization and prompt options and everything that we get with web sheet buttons. So for me, I'm still probably going to stick with that option for a little while, but I'm sure, as we have seen here, the workspace buttons are getting better and better with added functionality. So I'm sure that sort of prompt message is probably not far behind for us. Other features we've got, so the recently in the last 1 or 2 versions, we had the ability to start searching in our navigation tree here. But if you had a long list of elements, you still had to click show more if you wanted to scroll through them. Now you can just scroll through them all seamlessly. So that's a good thing, I guess. I know a lot of people were, again, interested in that. Web sheets, there were previously some issues where you couldn't retrieve data from multiple different servers, but now as long as they are on the same admin server, you can do that, as long as you are using a hard-coded name reference for the server, not a dynamic one, so be careful with those. If you are a cloud customer, you can delete TM1 databases from within the admin portal instead of requesting that IBM do it for you. So that's something that you'll probably use once every 3 years or so. What else do we have? I don't think there's much else going on. There is, however, one thing that again comes back to something probably quite nice for end users. If you are in a chart, visualization, we have this new icon, which is for hiding all of your total elements. I don't have any in this chart, but that actually is something quite handy. So often in my inputs, I will have a cube view where the user does their input per month and they have a full year column next to it. And then I will normally sort of put a line chart next to that for them to visualize the same data. And I was having to manually go through and hide the year element so that it doesn't completely ruin my line chart. Now we've just got this little tick box on off. So I think that is probably quite a nice, simple addition for us. But in general, if you are on Workspace Release 61, upgrade quite soon if you can. If you are not on 61 and you're looking at what version to go for, don't go to 61. Potentially do choose 62. And obviously all of the functionality that was added in 61 is still there. It is just new stuff that is available in 62. So time to upgrade again.